Jeff. Jeff. Jeff.
Jeff Stein's our national and presidential expert, noted author. You'll find his books at your favorite book location. Also, totallyiowa.com. The Iowa Business Report, the Iowa Politics Report comes to us from KXEL, Cedar Falls, Waterloo, where Jeff is currently joining us from today. Hello, Jeff.
The best stuff is really before I come on the air, and you start sending me texts, and really that's the best stuff is when we're not actually on the mic. No, I just have to tell the audience.
Well, it's just I'm trying to type to you. What I'm wearing today is the Minnesota State flag shirt, which I love. I do like the new Minnesota State flag, and I'm wearing the shirt that's got the design on it, and I'm trying to type MN. And it keeps auto-correcting to man. It's the man shirt, which I guess it works.
See, we're on the video thing, okay,
yeah.
Folks, so that he and I can see each other, which is supposedly for a better conversation. I don't know who needs to look at this.
What the hell?
He's pointing at his shirt, and I'm looking like I have no idea what he's talking about. And so then I get a text that says, Man State flag shirt. I thought, what in the dickens is the Man State?
It sounds like a Trump line from a rally. Man State flag shirt.
Well, this is what I didn't know. I didn't know if the format of the station had changed. I didn't know if you all of a sudden heard the word guilty and said, I'm now changing over to the side of the felon. I don't know. No. Man State flag shirts.
Yes, no, it's a fine shirt. No, I'm not going to the side of the felon.
It's a fine shirt. The shirt is fine. I love the blue color. It's very nice.
Very nice.
Man State.
Man State. Well, I mean, it's better than the stupidity void, which we ran with forever. So, hey, okay, so you and I, we talked Wednesday. Thursday afternoon, I'm thinking we're going home. No thing. They said we need to fill out the paperwork. I had Jack Rice, who's on Court TV, on with me on Friday. And we talked about the legal ramifications. The speed at which these 34 came down, it was pretty remarkable. Your thoughts when you heard guilty on all 34 charges?
Well, now remember on Wednesday, 1 week ago,
yes,
you said something like, well, it could be a verdict tomorrow. And I said, if there's a verdict by Friday, it's not a good verdict. I don't care which way it goes, because this case was more complicated. It was more nuanced. What I said last week, and I stick with it, it was somewhat rushed. But that doesn't mean it's the wrong outcome necessarily. But
technically, it's not the wrong outcome because it's what the jury did rule. I mean,
sure, but
barring problems on appeal.
But what I meant by that was if they would have come back in 20 minutes, you'd say, well, no, wait a minute, that's the wrong. That's what I'm getting at, is that you can't disallow the verdict. I mean, it is what it is. Given how everything played out, I don't know how it could have been anything other than this. And the reason is I'm a licensed attorney, but I haven't studied this case. I don't practice in New York, all that. There were a lot of things on this that, the jury instructions and the way things were going certainly lined up to where you could see why a jury would do that.
The fact that the jury was asking for rereads of the David Pecker testimony, which is once again Trump's buddy, and the fact that they were very, and he very clearly admitted, we came to this agreement, we were going to buy and kill stories, and that was what they wanted to hear. When I saw the passages they wanted to hear back from, I was like, this isn't going well for Donald. And it was clear.
It wasn't just that, though.
No,
right?
It
was Pecker, and then it was Cohen, and then could you read a little bit of what Stormy had to say? It's like, okay, if you're the Trump team, and we've talked about this, I maintain there's no judicial reason why Stormy Daniels needed to testify, because there was never a doubt that there was a payment made. But when you bring that in, that starts coloring things, that broadens it. And so when that's what they wanted to hear again, I'm thinking to myself, they're either going to go, and we talked about this, they're either going to go down each and every witness, God forbid, that would be excruciating, or that's what they wanted to hear, and it was just to support what their general predisposition was going into the jury box.
just looking at this as a court case, I think this is something that's a case that's going to be taught for years, in the sense being that if you do have a case and the guy that is the defendant doesn't have the rosiest record, but your main witness is also not the rosiest record, by turning the whole thing into a cesspool. I mean, Hope Hicks was probably the least offensive person that testified at all, but Stormy Daniels is not that far behind her. And, the fact is, by turning it into everyone here is rotten, that I think diminished Cohen's faults. It also enhanced Trump's. And so if you're in a law school, and as a person who knows law yourself, I've got to believe, just as a law case, that is a very something that's going to be taught for years on how you deal with a case with similar consequences. Not a real pleasant defendant, but your witness is worse.
Well, if you've got a nuanced documents case, and that's what this was a nuanced documents case, that is dry as 3-day-old toast. So what can you do as the prosecutor to try to put a little spark into it? Well, you're bringing in some of these ancillary figures. And yes, if your witness, this is textbook, you're right. If your witness is not terribly credible, what you want to suggest is everybody in the room is wallowing in the same mud.
Yep.
And if Michael Cohen, in this case, is so bad, why did Donald Trump hire him all these years? That's the kind of stuff that, yes, of course you whip all that up. You're trying to create this sense of, you're in the middle of a mud pile. If you're the defense, you should, and I'm not sure that their best argument was to just simply say Cohen bad, because, okay, so what? It would be to really hone in on the nuances, give them something to grab onto. And I don't know that they gave the jury anything to grab onto, given how the instructions came down, et cetera.
It's a political game. So immediately as this ruling came out, it was pretty stunning to see the entire Republican contingent. Every one of them saying the judicial system is broken, it's biased, mind you, as Hunter Biden is currently being prosecuted, the son of the president is currently being prosecuted, that Hillary Clinton, what is it? Megyn Kelly was talking about. It's time for us to go after Hillary Clinton. It's like, you mean the same woman you went after for 12 years, repeatedly 8 Benghazi hearings, and you still couldn't find anything on her? The reality is they've got to push this mentality. I understand why they have to, because they have to, in the mind of the voter, dismiss the felony counts as this is just a biased judge, it's a biased jury, it's biased everything. But talk a little bit about that. And as well, the damage that the Republicans are doing gleefully to the judicial branch of this country by basically doing this, suicide run on we'll take out the entire judicial system just to basically make Donald Trump look like the hero.
Well, there have been some who've been pretty quiet, actually. And I think you find that, and you don't know that because you're hearing the magpies.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
But I think it's interesting if you took a couple of steps back and looked at those who weren't really commenting on it. That's sort of telling. But here's the thing that I think is a bad idea about that philosophy. If you're saying, this is a broader statement, I'll come back to what you talked about. I am really mystified by people over the course of time who, if they don't like the verdict, they say, we did not get justice. Well, you didn't get the answer you wanted. And I don't care what we're talking about, if we're civil, criminal, whatever, like, well, we did not get justice. The system's broken. You just didn't like the outcome. I'm sorry. And sometimes the system is wrong. That's also a sad state of affairs. But to simply indict the entire process, but again, that's the cue that comes from the Trump campaign. And that's where the problem is, where there are 4 prosecutions. It so happens that those leading the prosecutions are not Republicans. Okay. And so what they're doing, and I've talked to campaign consultants on this topic where they're not involved in the campaign. They don't care R or D, but they say that's the strategy. You say, look, it's a big conspiracy. Everybody's against me, et cetera, because then it deflects from what you may have done or not done. Mm-hmm. And so, again, from a political standpoint, this has no bearing, save one thing. This has no bearing on November because those who are going to vote for him haven't changed their minds. Those who weren't going to vote for him haven't changed their minds. I think there may be people who stay home, and that's not being counted very, very much. But I think he's going to sentence him to jail with immediate commitment.
You do. I don't.
Yes, I do.
I think that Merchant is going to come on out and say, what he'll do is he'll say, I'm not going to put you in jail, but I'm going to give you the maximum public service. And I think that that's because he's going. I'm going to understand there is a dynamic here that has never been approached, and so I want to kind of. I'm not going to put you in jail, but I'm going to give you I can't remember what the
justice is. But justice is blind, Matt. If justice is blind, then you have to treat. See, this is the thing that got me about some of these analysts, where they're saying, well, he's a 78-year-old man, no criminal record. It's a paper offense. He should get a deferred judgment, probation, etc.
Tell that to Martha Stewart, by the way.
Tell that to Alan Weisselberg.
Exactly. Tell that to Michael Cohen. Exactly.
Well, now Michael Cohen.
There was more there, but still at the same time.
Okay. But the reason why, and I always get his name wrong, Weisselberg, whoever was the money guy in the Trump, okay, and he was taking the fall for everything. He's of the same age. He had no criminal history. He doesn't have as many felonies now that he's convicted of. What he had to do 4 months, I think, at the Gray Bar Hotel. Mm-hmm. So are you going to tell me that? I mean, if you're going to be consistent about your sentencing, I think the judge is secretly praying that, all right, they're going to file the appeal. He has 30 days to file the appeal. They'll file the appeal, and they will ask that any sentencing be postponed until after the appeal is over. That's why the sentencing is after the 30-day appeal period.
Yeah.
I hear these people honking about, well, it's right before the convention. Spit on the convention. Nobody cares. He picked that date because it's after the 30 days for appeal, giving the appellate court the time to get him off the hook, right? And they'll say the judgment is stayed, and et cetera. Because, all right, let's say he doesn't sentence him to jail. How about the monitoring bracelet? Mm-hmm. You're under house arrest in New York City. I mean, it's putting the judge in a horrible position. That's why I think he is probably praying that they kick that sentencing until after the appeal.
I think you're spot on that. I think you and I have talked about this margin of Republican voters that has seemed to be less enchanted with Trump this time around. And I think that there's a chance that they're going to be there. I also think independents are going to not exactly embrace Trump this time around because of this. But you're at the RNC, you're going to be in Milwaukee, you're going to go on out there and do your speech, and Trump is basically on house arrest or in jail, your nominees. How do you even begin to try to obviously it's going to be like, you see, they're locking him up for political reasons. I mean, that's going to be every speech.
Sure.
But at that point, I mean, it does sound very, crazy at this point. It's like, it's not everyone else. It's everyone else is against him. It's not the reality that he's just guilty. It's going to be amazing. That might be one of the most watched conventions ever.
Well, there are two things about what you just said. In the time that I worked as a criminal defense attorney, very few times did I have a client who thought they were guilty. Okay, so for example, you're saying Trump is saying, it's all a conspiracy. They're all against me. I had people with dirty UAs, proof of drug use. I was like, well, they set me up. What, they made you smoke? I mean, it was, it's always somebody else's fault.
Yeah.
So there's a mindset. It's more of a personality mindset. They have to, if sentencing is held on July 11th, isn't it?
Yeah, I believe so.
They have to have had him record his acceptance speech in advance. You have to do that, right? I mean, in all seriousness, because if the judge, often when a judge will issue the sentence, the judge will say, you have 90 days to get your affairs in order. What if he says 4 months and it starts them now.
We're now head out to cell block D for the acceptance speech. we can take a break.
So you're going to be...
Okay, we got to take a break. We come back. It's the Matt McNeil Show. Broadcasting in the evenings on WCPT 820 Chicago's Progressive Talk, and in the afternoons on AM 950, the Progressive Voice of Minnesota. It is the Matt McNeil Show on your Wednesday. Jeff Stein joining us. So, Jeff, I'm going to give Brett full credit on this. This is what's going to happen at the convention. He's like, we now go to Donald Trump, and all of a sudden you hear an audio going, you have a collect call from the New York penitentiary system. You need to accept all charges and understand anything said on this could be used against you in court. Do you agree? Yes. And they bring it
Here's my question about that.
Yes.
Brett seems way too familiar with the process of calls to and from a jail.
Making a comment on that.
I mean, apparently Matt's been calling Brett from jail again is how I was going to look at that.
Or it's the other way around. Who doesn't love a good Salisbury steak? Anyway.
Well, I'm going to be nice to the guy who has his finger on the microphone button, but this is the thumb in the eye. Trump, go ahead, do your acceptance speech on video in case you're not there to be there in person, but wear a bright orange necktie. Wouldn't that be a nice ode to the whole thing?
Will they let him have his hairpiece in there?
I don't think it's a hairpiece.
Oh, you think?
I just think it's bad.
You just think that's okay. That looks normal.
I have had people in this state who have shared a stage with him prior to him running. And it's always about, is that really your hair? And he'll say, okay, go ahead and pull it, just like he did with Jimmy Fallon. Remember they did that?
That's right.
And it's either a weave, which doesn't come off, a la Marv Albert, or I just want to see what happens when he doesn't have a 3-person pit crew fixing it all the time. I mean, that could be pretty entertaining.
His bronzer. I don't even know. We don't want to go down there. Okay. This aside, we should mention this. A requiem for the primary season. Yesterday, if I'm not mistaken, outside of, I think, a few islands out in the Pacific, we're done. The final states had their primaries. We're done. It's not really been an exciting primary race. It's not, the best part we heard is that RFK Jr. has a worm in his head. But that's still one of the most I still don't understand why you admitted that and thought that was going to help your campaign.
Well, get all the bad stuff out early.
Well, who doesn't like doom?
I have no idea. Well, now you're probably. Did you see New Jersey?
Yeah, yes, I did.
Now, here's what I figured you would mention. I saw these results last night. I thought Matt's going to mention this. Mr. Trump had a rally on the boardwalk or whatever.
Yes.
And said he's going to flip New Jersey red. But his own endorsed candidate for, wasn't it, U.S. Senate?
Yeah.
Failed.
Yes.
Whoops.
Well, okay, so we here in Minnesota, we've got Amy Klobuchar. She's running for re-election. And there was a great story about her coattails. And that literally, as far as politicians go from either Republican or Democratic Party, there are very few politicians that have the coattails of Amy Klobuchar, that whenever she runs, she does help down-ticket Democrats. Trump not only have we the money issues, not only do we have this, as we've talked about this, 3-4% of people who might just stay home because they just are tired of this, but he clearly has not had the coattails that the right has presented him as having. Sure, I think in the reddest of districts where, like I say, a turnip with an R next to it name could win, I think he does well there because when there really isn't a challenge from the left, people look for a more extreme challenge from the right. I think that's just how it works. But I think when it comes to toss-up districts or even up to like a +3 or 4 Republican district, it just doesn't seem to have – he does not have the coattails that you need a top of the ticket to have.
I don't think national people have coattails anymore. I mean, you mentioned Senator Klobuchar, and she does very well in Minnesota, right? Perfect. There was Iowa had a primary yesterday, non-presidential, and there's an incumbent Republican who was challenged in the primary for Congress, and she won 55-45. Oh, hello. That's pretty close. And that was a challenge from the far right. In other words, you're not conservative enough. And so it was a message that was being sent. But in terms of somebody like, and you and I have talked about this on the radio for years, I would tell you Obama didn't have good coattails. You saw it when he wasn't on the ballot.
Better in 08 than in 12. But yeah, you're right. I mean, in 12, he really didn't have anything.
And so that's the point. It's kind of like the states and its voters don't like somebody from out of town telling them how to vote.
Mm-hmm.
So I just don't think that he has the coattails.
There, with this whole thing where you immediately after this, you and I have talked about Trump with his wanting reparations from other Republican candidates because for his name, for all the good he's done for them. He immediately came out after the felony case and said, I don't want anyone to use the word felon or this convicted or anything like this without my blessing, without me getting a cut of it. I was just talking to someone in Illinois. I was talking to Patty Vasquez out in Chicago, and she was saying the Illinois Republicans are already out there saying, do not give money to the national campaigns. You want to give money, give it to the local candidates. Are you seeing it in Iowa as well? Are you seeing this kind of, okay, if you want to help the local guys, the coattails aren't there, the RNC is not there, there is demand for money here, so, off the books here, why don't you just send me a check?
It's very... The Trump effort is very understated in Iowa because he's taking it for granted, and he probably with good reason. It doesn't look like a Joe Biden state, and so these folks are rowing their own boat. But I don't know, to the direct point, I don't know of anybody running a campaign in Iowa that's looking to the federal, the RNC or the National Party for anything. Yeah. Even stickers and placards. They're all rowing their own boats. And I think they're just ignoring the National Party, to be honest with you.
When I ran into an Iowa pig farmer who basically said after Trump put the tariffs in back when he was in office, I still stand with him even though my entire business was destroyed. At that point, I knew he has Iowa. Like you said, I don't think Iowa's really in play anymore for the Democrats because if you can go out there, and really destroy the international pork markets and the pork producers are still, he's our guy. I'm like, yeah, there's pretty much nothing he can do that gets you on the bad side.
It's also the fact that the Iowa Democratic Party is non-existent these days. Well, they can't find candidates, for crying out loud. And I've talked to people who have, turned down the invitation to run. So it's it's a combination of factors is what I'm saying.
Well, it is going to be interesting. Obviously, I think a lot's here. We're going to see a lot of polling that's coming on out, and I don't necessarily trust these polls, but it will be interesting to see if they do show some sort of movement away from Trump in any capacity.
And you're 5 months away. Lots going to happen between now and then.
Thanks, Jeff. Appreciate it. Chicago, thank you very much. We'll talk tomorrow. Minneapolis, St. Paul, Hour 2 up next.